Today, what we're going to talk about really, in a way, deserves the title of, being yourself, all about being yourself fully. Yet I didn't call it that. I called it vulnerability and invulnerability because I think there's another aspect to it that I don't want to miss. Who here knows the band Tool? One, two, three. Okay. All right. So the band Tool, they have this song that where they say this amazing sentence, and it goes, swing on the spiral of our divinity and still be a human. And they talk all about letting the flow move through you in whatever way it wants to move through you without any resistance. So that the aspect that is really important for me to include, especially because I see so much non-dual bypassing, spiritual bypassing, or just misuse of the concepts, because they're so absolute and sometimes they're so above human. What happens is we neglect that second part of the phrase. We spiral on the spiral of our divinity without still being a human, and that's a big part of where we have to hold both things together. In a way, we're totally invulnerable. That's inherently our nature, because love, which is what we are, cannot be attacked, cannot be threatened. It didn't come and it will not go. And I'll talk about that more in a bit. But at the same time, on the level that we're dealing with day to day, I don't know about you, but I think I'm pretty vulnerable. I'm physically vulnerable. I could walk out on the street and get hit by a bus. I am vulnerable in the sense that if you show me terrible images like the images I've been seeing the past few weeks during this war, um, my heart will break. Right, we're vulnerable at the relative level. We're fragile, and there's a great opportunity for us at that level to use that for coming together as one. So that's one of the reasons why I really want to emphasize that, even if all we're learning here is to open back up to the awareness of the presence of love, which is the same as saying the awareness of God, where we can say, I and my Father are one, right? Even if that's what it's really about, even when we get there and we fully really embody that, that doesn't mean that our heart's not going to break. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to cry. Um, it doesn't mean, most of all, that we're going to become ignorant or that we're going to ignore calls for love and for help, whether it's from our neighbors, those around us, people around the world, or anything like that. Because we have to understand that, you know, this isn't about just, there's that know thyself, right? Know who you really are. We want to do that. But then, as the Course in Miracles says really beautifully, to teach isn't to then to just go and talk about it. To teach is actually to demonstrate. So being love and then living love in an expression, in the way that it acts through you, in the way that it responds to calls for love around you. Not that you have to do that all day, every day, but when they're there, you have to still have the human sensitivity to pick up on the need of the situation and to address it, and not to address it in a conceptual way where you say, well, oh yeah, you're drowning over there. Okay, that's all right. There's only love. I see it. You're loved, you're held as you're drowning. You kind of want to reach out to stick or swim there and do something actual, right? So these things aren't divorced. Your spiritual evolution and the way that you behave in the world are totally not divorced. In fact, one is a testament of the other. The way you move in the world is often a testament of where you are spiritually. So all of it really comes down to one thing: the ability to be yourself fully. Because when you're being yourself, there isn't any more two selves, like the small self, the false self, and the real self. When you're being yourself, that means that there isn't anything operating in the mind anymore. that's giving you reasons to hold back from your natural flow. Now, why do we hold back from our natural flow? Usually it's going to be because we're afraid of what the consequences might be. Oftentimes we're afraid of judgment, rejection, condemnation, being shamed. Um, and so we like to keep it small and keep it quiet and keep our throat chakras a little bit closed, and our solar plexus, not going to let it shine. That power that we have in us, we're not going to let it shine because it's safer. This is where we think we find safety. If I don't get any flack from anybody, if I don't disappoint anybody, if nobody's pissed around me, then I must be in harmony. And actually, that's not harmony. It's not harmony. It's like it's like if somebody, let's say you're living with someone and they make you every day food that you despise, you hate it. It's like you go through hell eating that plate, but you just do it every day because you don't want to, God forbid, hurt their feelings. That dish is important to them and you're just eating it every day. Yeah. And that's a funny example, but that's exactly the areas where we need to step really strong into self-validation, self-acceptance, self-love. Self-validation means I don't like this food and I validate that. I don't have to pretend to like something I don't just to avoid conflict with someone. All right? Because one day the truth has a way of surfacing. One day the person finds out that you did that all this time, and they might feel, depending on who they are, but they might feel really horrible. They're like, why couldn't you just tell me? Like, we didn't have to do this every day. Like, why didn't you just say something? There also might be a case where they might find it very endearing. But nevertheless, the moral of the story here is you don't need to sacrifice yourself for somebody else's happiness. Sacrifice isn't love. We have to get that strong in our head. There's been an association, probably a lot by Christianity, but even if you're not Christian, like I grew up in a Jewish household, still this thing is really big that you need to sacrifice for love. You need to do something that is against you to be loved, approved, appreciated, accepted, belonging. And that's why, Adyashanti always said that his teacher's definition of enlightenment was to be able to stand on your own 2 feet, to be yourself, to be whole yourself, to not rely on needing those approvals and acceptances and whatnot, the sense of belonging even from others, to be able to stand alone. That's independence, that's power, and that's the freedom to be yourself regardless of what anyone says. So what we want to look at, and everyone can sort of contemplate this for themselves, what we want to look at is, where am I wanting to maybe flow in a particular direction? I want to act in a certain direction. I want to express certain things, but I keep it at bay because I'm afraid of some negative outcome, namely judgment, or I don't want to expose myself. Where is that in us? Where is there a place where we're torn between maintaining a certain image of ourselves in the eyes of others and actually just going ahead and being ourselves and letting everybody else worry about their image of us? So what I'm talking about when I say flow, I mean flow. I mean a certain type of flexibility, maybe agility. It's a word that Jess offered me this week, agility. Yeah, maybe an agility and nimbleness, but really it's a flexibility to be able to follow your heart in any moment, in any direction. And in order to do that, we have to not hold an image of ourselves that this is who I am. A person like this doesn't do things like that. It's just a limitation in the mind, you know. That's why, just for example, like when Michael Jordan, who's known and was known and defined as a basketball player, then changed to baseball, the whole world was like, what? He's a basketball player. It's the world gets fixated on who and what we are, right? But we don't have to, because it's not true. You can be this today, you can be that tomorrow, you can be this morning, you can be that this evening, if it's true to your heart, if it's true to your flow. The weather, it's like the weather. The weather can change in a minute. I'm not talking about the weather of the mind with its moods and things like that. I'm talking about the a sort of a lack of attachment. There's nothing holding you to this side. There's nothing holding you to that side. You're able to move, right? So it's all these ideas in our heads that we have to look at. Where are we holding on to an image, and where are we holding on to some kind of safety, so that, God forbid, if we come out to the world in all our light and glory, people will go like, who do you think you are, or whatever they might say, or you're wrong, or that, and we feel exposed. We feel like, oh gosh, I'm not safe here. I can be attacked. This is where the knowing of our invulnerability is crucial. In fact, the more you know your invulnerability, the more you're going to allow yourself to be vulnerable in the world. Because to be vulnerable requires strength and courage. And that strength and courage shouldn't come from my little old self. They should come from my source, which is love, God, Abba, I call it. That is what we want to start to connect with. And we want to let that work in our lives in such a way that it allows us to come out. It allows us to be vulnerable. So think about it this way. This love that I speak about, the presence of love, I want anybody here to come up with any thought that you have about what can kill that love. How do we kill it? Is this war that's happening in the world right now, is that the end of love? Is love threatened by this war? No. No. See, would it be threatened by a bigger war? Would it be threatened by just the whole entire world right now going into war? Is that going to kill love? If we all killed each other, and that's it, it's the end. No more humans. Would that kill love? If the whole galaxy, the whole freaking universe just went away, boom, something happened, would that kill love? Love isn't a product of the world. Love isn't the product of this universe. Love isn't a product of space and time. Love wasn't born like this body was born. Love was before, love is now, and love will be after. Love is immovable and unchangeable. Love, God, it's a presence that we may have lost our awareness of, but it's always there, and you can always connect to it. And when you connect to it, the feeling of it is that nothing in this world has any power whatsoever. All the hatred, all the warring, all the condemnation, all the judgment, none of it means anything. It doesn't mean a thing, because you're connected to true meaning. You're connected to what is real, to what is power. What is power cannot be threatened in any way whatsoever by all these things that try to be power. You may have seen my video recently. It was called God and the Barking Chihuahua. All of the hatred of the world and all of the noise that it makes and all of the big fear and all of its darkness and all of its stuff is nothing but a barking chihuahua. All the loudness. Who needs to be so loud? Who needs to make so much chaos and violence. Who needs to try to control everybody else? Only the weak. Only the weak. If you're already powerful, you're whole, you're already complete. That the one who's most powerful actually doesn't need to do anything, doesn't need to prove anything. They're free to play. See, it's when we're not powerful that we're trying to get power. So then we're trying to control other people. Then we're trying to destroy other things that we feel threatened by. Is that power that needs to destroy something? No, because if I'm already powerful, I don't need to destroy anything. I don't need to take power. I already am power. That's God. God doesn't need to do anything. Yeah. There's nothing to do anything to as well. There is no other in that sense. There's no against. There's no opposition. There's nothing. Love isn't in a war with hate. Light isn't in a war with darkness. It's by their very nature that they are eternal, while darkness and hate are temporary. Yeah, because darkness doesn't actually have its own source. There's no source of darkness. Darkness is only an absence of light. Light is the source and the truth and the way and the life of everything. Yeah. So only that is real. So that's where I say things like you are unfuckwithable. It's not because you're so great. It's because God is great. It's because your true nature is great. It can't be fucked with. It can't be touched. You're invulnerable. And so you need to feel that. You need to feel how it's not a question of quantity. There's no quantity of wars. There's no size of illusion that is going to trump the truth. There's no hierarchy of illusions. An illusion is an illusion is an illusion is an illusion. They're all nothing. No matter how loud they bark, no matter what they do, they're all nothing. And so you got to apply that to the voice in your head that tells you, if I go ahead with my heart and do what it is I feel called to do, it's dangerous. Again, it's dangerous in what way? You see, it's another way that this voice appears. Sometimes it's trying to bark like a big dog when it's just a little chihuahua. And sometimes it's trying to tell us that it's in our favor and that this is the way to safety, is to stay small, hold back, suppress yourself, keep that energy of fear. That fear is your friend. Fear is protecting you from going out there, protecting you from conflict, it's protecting you from judgments and everything. And all it's really doing is saying it's unsafe to be you. Now, I don't know who here wants to live that way where it's unsafe to be me. Do you want to live like that? That's like the thought that sort of runs there, is it's unsafe to be me fully. So you kind of become like a politician. Well, I think in this situation I can be myself about 7% more. I'll let myself go a little bit, but in this situation I really have to pull back because this person's getting really pissed and I don't want any conflict and all whatever that is, right? You negotiate how much you're allowed to be yourself and how much you're not. And what I'm saying is two things. One is, when you know that invulnerability, you're free to play. You're free to play in whatever way that needs to show up at any given moment. There's no obligation. You don't owe anybody anything. That's guilt. The idea that I have to please you, that I have to sacrifice for your happiness. That's guilt. That's overextending your responsibility. It's not your job to worry about how they'll react. It's not your job to worry about what they'll think. If you just go ahead and be you, you let them deal with that. Yeah. And there's another level other than the level of connecting to your divine invulnerability, which is ever present. That's ever present. That's why Kabir could laugh when they were coming to kill him, because he yelled, "You could take my body away, but you can do nothing to me." And the story goes is that his body was basically, they really tore him apart, and he was laughing through it because he said, this is a joke. You can't hurt me. That's knowing your invulnerability so deeply, right? But what we need is also sometimes another step between our human self and our divine self. And that is a step where we need to have a better relationship with our own self. And what I mean by that is, when there is a fear in you that arises to be yourself, or when honestly anything arises in you, like let's say you have been yourself a little bit, but you feel attacked for it, or something like that, that's your opportunity to really, really work on your relationship with yourself and make it really beautiful, because that's your opportunity to say, this part in me that is feeling unsafe, this part of me that is feeling attacked, this part of me that wants to attack back, whatever that part is, I don't condemn it. I don't judge it. I actually validate it 100%. I accept it. And I'm going to love it. And I'm going to hold it. And I'm going to sit with it and say, hey, buddy, what do you want to tell me? I'm going to listen to you. Because you see, we hear about the spiritual goal of being, this perfect light, this perfect love, this perfect awareness of oneness, untouchable, invulnerable, all that kind of stuff. But the way to get there, is not to condemn all the parts of us that are not feeling that. They're not feeling that. Like some days you feel vulnerable. Some days you feel whatever you feel. So what do? Do you judge yourself for that? Because I've said that the only thing that needs to sort of drop in this whole awakening thing is just that. It's just judgment. It's just the idea of the word wrong. So when you make yourself wrong, you're actually, because you're saying, what's in me right now, this fear, that can't, that's ego, right? So it's wrong. So I need to get rid of it. So we're taking a part of us that maybe is in judgment, but we're judging it further. And that actually fixes it in place. It doesn't move. It just stays there. So condemning yourself for whatever is not enlightened enough in you, or not what you want to be in you, is not going to help you. The other approach helps. The other approach is to soften up, actually, and say, this is in me. And what it's doing is it's calling for love. And so I'm going to be that love right now. I'm going to answer that call for love of this aspect of myself. And then it's amazing, as you sit with all these parts of you, the part that feels unsafe, the part that feels attacked, the part that even feels like it wants to attack. When you sit with all these parts of you, you glean something from them. They end up, what feels like weakness ends up becoming strength. It's amazing when you sit with these emotions in that kind of a self-validating and self-accepting way. They not only melt away, they transform, literally. They, like an alchemist, you transform, you transmute them into a new strength. For example, during this war with the whole Israel situation, when there were moments where something arose in me that said, ooh, I really, I feel so opposed, and that's really me wanting to oppose back. That's really me wanting to attack back. And when I loved those parts, the result of that was actually not something that I thought, but it was some sort of, like, when you love yourself with those emotions and you validate them, it turned into some sort of more self-respect. And those parts in you are trying to tell you what you really need. But the thing is that we make it about the other. My desire to attack the other wasn't really about the other. It was actually something in me telling me, you need to stand up for yourself. You need to respect yourself. You need to not let yourself be drained by this other person's energy or whatever it is. It's a very self-respecting thing. Does that make some sense? Yeah. It's when you sit with it that it becomes actually evident to you, right? It's not something logical from your head that you know. It's when you really say to that feeling, I really validate and I really accept you, and I'm going to sit with you and I'm going to love you, and I'm going to hear what you want to tell me. And it will tell you. You'll glean something from it. And there's a transformation in doing that. So often we need these two steps. We need one, the love that we extend to ourselves, to our parts that are hurting, and that our willingness to be with them, to be present with them in love and not judgment. That's one part. But in that, then once you've sort of integrated that, now it's going to be much easier to connect to God, because you're feeling more whole and you're feeling more loving, more loved, because you just loved yourself. Now, when you're feeling that way, it's easier to reach to God because God loves you too. All you need to feel when you're reaching for God is that there is no judgment. There is no condemnation. There is nothing in that presence of love that is going, you didn't do well. Yeah, you didn't do well, Daniel. There is nothing doing that. There's no this. There's no, you disappointed me. There's no, I'm going to punish you. There's none of that. It starts, the premise of the connection with love is always you're perfect. Hey, first of all, you're perfect. Oh, but what about what I did and how I reacted to that person? I don't, you're perfect. I know your essence. I don't know anything about how you think you should have conducted yourself versus how you actually conduct. Love isn't worried, concerned about that. It knows who you are forever. It doesn't care what you did, what you said. That's for you to learn from. That's for you to learn from. Love isn't you evaluating you in the ways that you evaluate yourself. Love just loves you, and it's forever. There's nothing, you can hate yourself for 70 years, but can wake up in one instant to the realization that God has never hated you, that was all you evaluating yourself with the ego's thought system, that you're not enough. You're evaluating yourself by who you are in the world and how successful you've been. You're evaluating yourself by all kinds of made up standards of who you should be. You're evaluating yourself by all kinds of ideas that really are inhuman. They're not allowing you to have a process. You think you shouldn't be learning. You should be perfect from the get-go. All kinds of ideas of what you did that you shouldn't have done, or what you didn't do that you should have done. These are all your guilt. This is all your guilt. Love sees none of that, knows none of that. It sees you immaculate, perfect, flawless, 100 gazillion million trillion% worthy of love. That's all it knows. It sees you as timeless being, not as a product of time. And that's what it loves, and it will love it forever, because you are love. It's like love loving itself. And that's the only thing it knows to do. And that will never die. There will never be any amount of hatred or guilt or blame or judgment or condemnation or executions or whatever goes on in this world that will kill that love. That love will still love forever. That's why I call the ego a buffoon, because no matter how much it tells you in your head that love is dead, that now we're guilty, that now we've done something wrong, that now we should be ashamed of ourselves, that now something is off, something is wrong, something's not whole. No matter how much it does this, it's a buffoon, because it will never be true. That's a buffoon. A buffoon is a sort of moron, a kind of idiot, maybe a Nimrod, who tries to think that if I keep doing this thing that isn't true, maybe one day it will be. It will never be true. So you have to start to let go of all that you think isn't good enough about you, isn't right about you, all these thoughts that say, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet, right? I have so much work to do. I have this and that and blah, blah, blah. Start from the end. Start from the truth. Don't work the way to the truth. Start from the truth. I am already that. I'm already perfect. I'm already invulnerable. I mean, if you got God in your corner because you decided to connect with that presence of love and start from there, then who can fuck with you? Nobody can fuck with you because they have no power. You're connected to the only real power there is. There's only one power. There's only one source. We think of even about our income. We think our income comes from our boss. I better please my boss because he's the one in charge of that aspect of my life. I better please this person and that person because they have some power with what's happening in my life. Everything in your life is coming from the source. There's nothing nowhere else it could come from. It's this infinite energy, this infinite intelligence that if you are aware of it, if you're in touch with it, it will operate in your life. And from it does everything come. That's why I say I don't take credit for my invulnerability. I don't take credit for my strength. I know where it comes. It comes from the source. It comes from having the awareness of the source. And that energy knows its perfect divine intelligence. So it knows how to show up, when to show up, and what way it's needed exactly. If it's needed to show up as money, it'll show up as money. If it's needed to show up as healing, it'll show up as healing. If it's needed to show up as something that'll shake you up a little bit in your life to awaken you because you're too complacent and too comfortable, it'll show up as that. Any way it needs to show up, it'll show up as that. But there's everything that's, it's like they say in Arabic, they say kullu min Allah. It means everything is from God. Everything is from God. But what's really important here is you're either connected and aware of the presence of love or you're not. So when you're not, what you're going to manifest in your life is the disconnection. When you are, what you're going to manifest in your life is the connection, is the power and the love and the beauty. And what this shows up as is miracles. It shows up as beautiful, true, honest, authentic connections. It shows up as abundance. It shows up as just a sense of I have nothing to fear. And however I flow today, however my flow feels today, that I love. I love however I'm going to show up today because I'm free. I don't need to prove anything. I'm already innocent. What am I trying to do? Who am I trying to prove something to? Right? I'm already innocent. I'm already good. I'm already starting with a clean slate. No past. Yeah. So when you start to connect more and more to that energy, you're going to allow yourself to be more vulnerable in the world. Because let me tell you something, when somebody judges you, it has much more to do with them than with what you're doing. It brings up stuff for people when you're being a light unto the world, where you're being a light in the world, where you're daring to not stick to an image, to not stick to your lane. You're supposed to be this kind of person. You're like, I'm a child of God. I can play however I want. There's no rules here. The only rule is love. That's the only thing. I'm not harming anybody, right? But that freedom, that power, and then you demonstrate that. And people go like, wow. Some people will be inspired and go like, okay, so maybe I can do that too. And some people will be threatened and go like, I gotta put this person down before they get too bright, because their shining scares me because it reflects to me how I'm not doing that, and it makes me feel terrible. So some people, instead of learning from you, they'll look at the contrast between what you're doing and where they are, and they'll take it as a personal offense that you're shining. Yeah. But it's your nature to shine. It's your nature. You are light. You literally are light. It's your nature. That light is strength. That light is positivity. That light is hope in the good way of hope, not like the ego's hope, where it's like a sense of incompletion and you're hoping to become complete. This is a type of hope that's already complete, that's already knowing that everything is possible, that's eager to see where this is going to flow, but so happy in this presence that it's experiencing in the now. So you're whole and you're ready to play. That's the thing, is it brings us to also this self-forgiveness. Anywhere we think we've failed, it doesn't matter. We can forgive that in the sense of letting that go, because now is a brand new moment. So if you feel like I've failed at expressing myself fully in this life, there is no past. Now how can I express myself more fully? Forget about what happened then. But it's very important to keep that humanness, to be real, that you're going to have preferences, and it's in fact unloving in certain times to not set a boundary or to stay in something that is not supportive of you, and you stay there because of love. Actually, love is trying to tell you, love includes you. Did you forget? Like, if this isn't loving to you, this isn't loving, period. You see, if this isn't loving to you, this isn't loving, period. We have to remember that. So you have to honor yourself. You have to let yourself be in your power, in your strength, in your light, because if you're not, how are you going to be a presence of love in the world if you're sacrificing, if you're pleasing, if you're suppressing your own flow to make somebody else happy? You're not there. You're not showing up. So vulnerability is required in order to show up in the world. I'm willing to be vulnerable and speak up about this. And I'm willing to also be wrong. And if I'm wrong and the whole world judges me for it, well, honestly, they can go screw themselves. I'll tell you why. Because I'm still evolving. I'm still learning. I'm allowed, no matter what anybody says, I'm allowed to have my process. And that's on the human level, it's not going to look perfect. I'm going to learn things. Maybe I was wrong, maybe whatever, but that's okay. Everybody expects everybody else to be perfect. Nobody's perfect anyway. We're in a process where we're learning here. It's okay. I think the example of a buffet is perfect. A buffet might have all kinds of different foods in it, but I mean, if you're ill with yourself, you're going to be more attracted to some foods than others. On the human level, you're not going to treat everyone the exact same way. You're going to care for your own children quite a bit more than your neighbor's children. Like all these ideas of there are no, right, it's true. There's no nationality, there's no religion, there's none of that stuff. There's no gender in our true self. None of that. There's no time, there's no space, there's no form. None of that can even exist. But on the level you're dealing with daily, you deal with the relative. And in the relative, you know what? Sometimes certain minorities, they need your back. Sometimes the blacks, sometimes whoever it is, they are living as a black person. It's not as much as spiritual as we can get. There's a certain experience that comes with that, and you can't deny it. If you're living as a woman, you have certain experiences that I, as a man, just don't have. It's a fact. So we have to understand that there are some environments that we're not going to choose to be in, just like there are some foods we're not going to choose to eat. It's okay. On the human level, it's never going to be the perfect love of heaven. You are going to weep over the death of your own family member, and you're not going to weep over the death of somebody in, I don't know, Tasmania. It's just not going to happen. On the relative, there are these differences, but in your heart, you can know that this is all one, that there is no opposition really in you to anyone. But it doesn't negate the fact that on the relative, you have to address things in the appropriate way. So powerful. And it works in your life. You see, whatever you're aware of, wherever your awareness is at, wherever your focus is at, that's what's going to operate in your life. So if we're focused on the self-judgment or the lack of acceptance or whatever it is, that's what's going to be operating in our lives. If we're focusing on the awareness of the absolute light and love of God, that's what's going to be operating in our lives. And yeah, so it's literally, that's all it takes, is having the awareness of that. But for that, you really have to drop the past. And this is an opportunity just for everyone to share. You don't have to if you don't feel comfortable, but it's an opportunity to share maybe more intimately right now with each other. This is a really safe group. I guarantee you that. Yeah, maybe where it is you feel you've been suppressing yourself, or you've been sacrificing instead of honoring yourself, where you've maybe been enabling something toxic rather than setting a boundary and being firm and assertive. Because sometimes we don't realize that love can show up as really firm and assertive. It's because love respects you. Love includes you. Love honors you. Right? And actually, when we're doing that in a situation where we're standing up for ourselves and no longer enabling whatever it is that's toxic, that's not only loving towards you, it's loving towards both, because it's no longer allowing the toxicity in the relationship. The other person can walk away from that and either hate you for it, but they can also learn from it and go like, that's good. That's what you need to do when a situation is toxic. You need to stand up like that. They have a chance to learn from it, but you're not responsible of whether they'll learn from it or not. You don't stay in the relationship just because the other person expects you to, or something like that. That's this pattern of codependency, which is very unhealthy. Yeah, you have to be independent in your relationships. So yep, so we can talk about all of that, and here we go. Well, that's beautiful, and that's that really hits the yeah, lightsaber. That really hits the part about yeah, how I think vulnerability can bring us closer and also make us realize that we're all sharing this vulnerability. Like that's part of what makes you open your heart, is like we all this is a commonality. This is another place where on a relative level we're one. And this is one of the things that to me it screams to me like, well, if we're all vulnerable, if we're all fragile, then this is like a great opportunity to be there for each other, to really hear each other's call, and to be there for each other. I mean, because we always wait on somebody. We always wait on somebody. I don't know who we're waiting on. The aliens, we're waiting on the government, we're waiting on Jesus to come back. I don't know who we're waiting on. It's like, it's us. It's us. Community has to be the next stage of this world, because this isolation thing, where there's a pandemic of loneliness, where there's a pandemic of lack of support and people struggling all on their own, that is by no means a reflection of heaven, of the kingdom of heaven. It's not it. The kingdom of heaven is joined. And in that joining, there's this power, there's this love, there's this end of loneliness, right? It's so simple. If the problem is separation, the answer is joining. Why is that so hard to get? Yeah. And so that's why I brought to both groups, I brought the question about how you feel about the energy about standing up for yourself. Because a lot of times something in us will tell us this is wrong, this is ego. But like such a big part of this opening to love is really, really having it very important to remember that it includes you. That if you're going to be loved, you have to feel loved. You have to feel supported. You have to feel included. You have to feel like you're honoring yourself. Like, like this is what I say is, when you value yourself, remember we did that gathering about valuing yourself. One of the things I said is it's important that you feel joy. It's important that you feel good. It's not like first of all, I'll make everybody else happy, then we'll look at my joy. That never ends, because you make them happy today, but you need to make them happy tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. And then you meet new people, and then you have more work to do of making them happy. And what about if I follow my joy and see what happens there? What happens then? And you know what? Those who resonate with your joy and want to play with you will come and play with you. And those who don't will leave. And why is that so bad? Why should I feel guilty about that? Each one will find their kids to play with, right? Remember also that in this world, if you don't stand up for yourself, nobody will. Most likely nobody will, for most of us. And we don't want anybody to do it for us anyway, because that deprives us of the opportunity to learn to do it for ourselves, right? So that's why it's also not your job to extend your responsibility to others and help them stand for themselves, or help them be happy or whatever. You can share the idea with them and leave it with them, like I'm going to leave it with you guys now, but you don't have to do it for them. They have to learn, they have to go through it. It's like when you have a kid or having teenagers, they're going to go through stuff. Sometimes they're going to do stupid things, but you can't go through it for them. You can't gain life experience for another person. That's theirs to do. Um, yeah. Yeah. So I think we can sum it up with, overall, we're talking about invulnerability and vulnerability. We're saying we have to honor the places in us that only want us to be true to ourselves, true to our hearts. We have to respect our flow and not be worried or concerned about whether other people are respecting that flow or not. Because sometimes when you leave people and you don't even intend to leave them, it's just happening organically by you following your heart, your truth. Sometimes they will have some yucky things to tell you because they're not happy about it, but that has nothing to do with you. If you're true to you, that's fine. And that's okay. You're not hurting anyone. You're being true to you. And eventually they will see later on down the road that this was the right thing to do and that was beneficial. But sometimes our level of evolution a lot of times in the world is about that of an 8-year-old. So we will have tantrums, or people will have tantrums towards you when you follow your truth. But that's okay. Remember, you're not being against them. You're just being for yourself. There's a big difference. Being for myself. I'm not against you. I'm not telling you you should be somehow different than you are. I'm just following my truth, and you don't like it, and that's okay. So we validate ourselves on this level, and then if you really want to take it home, you go from there always, always, always to that invulnerability of the light that is unmovable, immovable, unchangeable. That light which knows that no matter how much people try to guilt you or each other, or how much we listen to the ego in this world, still the truth is true. And only the truth is true, and nothing else will ever be true. And the truth is, we are all incredible, like beyond imagination, how much we're loved. We're all incredibly loved. We're all incredibly accepted. We're all held in the wholeness of this love forever, 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 forever. And when we connect to that, it heals our minds, it heals our bodies, it heals our life situations, it heals everything. If you let the Father do the works through you, everything will be miraculous. Okay. So I'm going to stay here for a moment, Sharon, if you want to answer your question. But other than that, we're done. And I love you all. You guys are amazing. I feel blessed to be able to hear your perspectives every week. And thank you.
Thank you.